When I was rushed into the operating room, my family and boyfriend were there supporting my foster sister, Sophie, as she competed in her dance event. That day, my surgery didn't go as planned. The tumor in my brain was successfully removed, but my nerves were severely damaged. As a result, I lost the ability to feel sensations like a normal person. I had a brain tumor and desperately wanted to inform my parents and boyfriend about my condition. However, my parents were occupied with purchasing plane tickets to take Sophie abroad for her dance competition. Meanwhile, my boyfriend Ethan was constantly working overtime. I spent a long time hesitating while typing a message in the chat interface, eventually deciding to delete it. I realized that even if I shared my situation, no one would truly care. In everyone's eyes, my existence was insignificant compared to Sophie's. Sophie was the daughter of my father's comrade. When she was 6 years old, her parents died in a car accident. Driven away by her relatives, Sophie ended up dirty and homeless on the streets until my father, who was visiting an old friend, found her. Since then, she became our family's second daughter. I was 10 years old that year and Sophie was 6. My parents told me, "Ava, you're growing up. You need to learn how to take care of your sister." I didn't know how to care for her. All I knew was that Sophie was always so fragile. She didn't need to do anything. She just stood there, looking at me with teary eyes, as if everything I had was hers. When I was 10, I lost my own bedroom and moved into the guest room. At 12, my piano lessons were canceled and our family's piano was sold, transforming the empty room into Sophie's dance studio. After turning 15, I stopped wearing new clothes altogether, always rotating between 2 sets of school uniforms. My parents didn't care. They dressed Sophie beautifully and boasted about their pretty daughter to everyone they met. From that time on, I rarely went home. The year I was about to graduate from college, Sophie went to study abroad. My parents briefly remembered me, calling often, showing concern for my life, and sometimes sending me job recruitment information in the city where I lived. By sending their comrade's orphan to college, my father achieved what he valued most. He was in high spirits and said he would visit me in my city and verify if my 3-year boyfriend Ethan was reliable. I had no expectations from them anymore, but I still arranged for their reception at a hotel and restaurant. I just didn't expect that Sophie, whom I hadn't seen for a long time, would be with them that day. Her smile was exceptionally pure, just like when she first came to our house. She smiled at Ethan the entire evening. Later, I noticed Megan's profile picture pinned at the top of Alex's chat. Before being rushed into surgery, I couldn't resist calling my parents. The call connected for only 3 seconds, and I heard their worried voices. "Sarah, we're boarding now. Your sister's competition is crucial. We'll talk when we return if there's anything." I didn't get a chance to respond before the call ended. Shocked, I stared at my phone. Just then, Alex posted that he was pursuing his dreams abroad, and the ticket showed the country where Megan was competing. I stared fixated until my aunt couldn't stand it anymore and forcefully took my phone away. "I've signed the consent form for you. Don't worry, I'll handle everything. Your brother has been reckless these past years. You've endured enough," she said tenderly, patting my head, then sighed deeply. "Sarah, I'll be here waiting for your return." I was pushed into surgery, and anesthesia slowly took hold. Before losing consciousness, I wondered if I would die during the operation. Would my parents mourn me? And Alex, I thought. Once I woke up, I needed to tell him myself. I knew he had fallen out of love. This time, I decided to end things with him. Alex and I didn't have a grand romance. In the early days of our college life, our relationship was admired by both teachers and peers. The story started predictably. The student council president, from a privileged background and good-looking, helped a fellow student who fainted from exhaustion at a welcome event. The next time they met, he left 2 candies in her pocket deliberately. From then on, Alex kept candies for me in his coat pocket. To him, I was someone easily swayed by mere gestures. He often looked at me with concern, saying, "Sarah, I've never been so afraid of losing someone before." He claimed I meant more to him than anyone else. There was always a special spot for me beside him, much like the candies in his coat. However, the last time I checked Alex's coat after an all-nighter for 2 meetings, I found a peculiar lipstick. Chanel Silvertube 116, Megan's favorite shade. I quietly returned the lipstick to his pocket and decided to carry my own treats from then on. My life took a drastic turn when I was 10. From that age, I tried to become self-reliant, lowering my expectations of others to avoid disappointment and despair. But being human, I couldn't maintain the carefree facade I desired. Alex spent a year pursuing me and then cared for me for another 3 years. In total, 4 years passed, during which he gradually distanced himself, making me feel that I, too, had someone to depend on. Yet, the narrative remained cliché. Just when I believed I had found someone who truly cared, he changed his heart. He had fallen for my sister. Initially, it was pity for her troubled upbringing. Then, her vibrant personality captivated him in every possible way. As he listened to Megan describe her passion for sports and witnessed her excellence on the field, Alex realized his true feelings for her. He confessed that he had never met someone so special, sincere, and passionate, like a blazing flame. Through her, he discovered that love should burn brightly. After a few drinks, he admitted that his feelings for me were more about familial attachment and habit. Subsequently, he fervently pursued Megan and separated from me. Naturally, I was also preparing to gracefully exit their lives as much as possible. This was something I had done repeatedly in the first 2 decades of my life, blending into the background and quietly withdrawing. But all these thoughts shifted the moment I regained consciousness after surgery. I realized it shouldn't be me who fades away. The first to notice my transformation was my aunt, who sat beside my bed peeling apples and sharing amusing stories to comfort me. She observed that I seemed indifferent and didn't seek comfort despite my quiet demeanor. Although I rarely voiced my needs, she could always discern from my eyes that I still yearned deeply for my parents' attention and the unconditional love that was rightfully mine. However, that longing had now vanished. Upon discharge from the hospital with my aunt's support, doctors assessed my condition. When asked if I felt anything unusual, I calmly replied that I had never felt better. All the emotions that once clouded my mind, obstructing clear thoughts, had dissipated. I could now view many things calmly and rationally. For instance, my parents genuinely didn't care about me, so their inheritance might not include me but could instead burden me with responsibilities. The company Alex and I had co-founded, where I managed all operations, only required one person. I no longer sought emotional validation from them, firmly standing up for what was rightfully mine. Upon returning home, my aunt and I encountered my parents, Megan, and Alex just arriving from their trip abroad. Despite their joyous reunion, no one bothered to ask why I hadn't called that day. As they entered, they saw me standing pale-faced in the living room. The 4 of them showed signs of embarrassment. Yes, 4 people. Alex was among them. Megan quickly approached, linking her arm with mine, asking if I minded them celebrating her award with Alex at our home. Previously, I might have ignored it to remain the obedient child in their eyes, but now, under their scrutinizing gaze, I gently pushed Megan's hand away. Megan immediately began to cry, feeling wronged. My father quickly found reasons to scold me, while Alex wanted to speak but refrained from lying when our eyes met. My mother stayed silent, allowing them to berate me without intervening. Only when my aunt, who was upstairs packing my belongings, came downstairs and took my hand to leave, did my father and Alex pause. As we departed, my mother inquired about our destination. When I revealed that from now on, only my aunt was my family, my father nearly lost his temper. As my aunt swiftly took me away, leaving my mother persistently questioning from a distance, it took her some time to comprehend the situation. My mother's subtle attempts to make me feel guilty no longer affected me. I finally disclosed my surgery and revealed who truly signed the consent form. Upon hearing this, my mother's face turned ghostly pale. "Why didn't she inform the family about such a serious matter?" she muttered. My aunt smiled and reminded her that half a month ago she had called multiple times. My mother seemed to recall something, astonishingly pulled out her phone and frantically searched the screen. "It's useless even if you find records. You did answer her calls, but who had the patience to listen? You were all busy accompanying your adopted daughter on the plane," my aunt said before flooring the gas pedal and driving away with me. That night, my mother attempted to contact me but discovered that all her accounts had been blocked by me. Alongside me, my father, Sarah, and Alex were all blocked. Unable to reach me and constantly being scolded, my parents couldn't muster the courage to confront my aunt and uncle. They could only complain about me within the family circle, labeling me as petty and unfilial. They accused me of being envious of my sister's success and awards, and of not informing the family when I fell ill, making a spectacle even in front of my aunt. Initially, my aunt found their complaints amusing. She advised me to ignore those group messages, then proceeded to share my medical records and photos of her caring for me in the hospital. She questioned how their consciences could be so corrupt. Their own daughter was critically ill and hospitalized. Surgeries were repeatedly delayed because of them, yet they showed no concern and even belittled their recovering daughter. My parents' deceit was unveiled, and they grew angry in the family group chat, sending multiple voice messages arguing with my aunt. However, my aunt ignored them and exited the group. That night, she embraced me to sleep, gently patting my shoulder with warm hands. My brother and his family were wrong. Auntie knows you did nothing wrong. If you feel sad, just let it out. Don't keep your grievances bottled up, she said. Hearing this, I simply looked at my aunt calmly. I told her I wasn't sad at all, not a single emotion stirring in my heart. By the time I saw my parents again, I no longer cared whether they cared about me. I was focused on cutting ties with them to prevent being dragged down in the future. Under the moonlight, I noticed surprise in my aunt's eyes. Those usually compassionate eyes widened and then filled with pain. I realized I had a problem. I could understand others' emotions clearly, yet I couldn't feel any emotions myself. Perhaps this was a side effect of the surgery, but I didn't mind. In fact, I thought it was preferable this way. I still possessed the ability to discern right from wrong. I just became more objective and rational. Just like now, I knew my aunt genuinely cared for me. Even if I couldn't feel gratitude internally, I knew I should strive to honor my aunt in the days ahead. As for my parents, they might have noticed my change, but still hoped I would return and continue to be controlled by them. However, they didn't realize it was no longer possible. Another 2 weeks passed. My parents flaunted in their social circles daily about how well they treated Megan, relaying the news to me through others. They wanted me to feel regret, to understand that if I were smart enough, knew how to submit to them and please them like Megan, they could treat me well too. Even though I had met their expectations for over 2 decades, seeing my indifference finally caused them to panic. One day, at the company entrance, I encountered my parents and Megan's family with Alex, who had been missing for 2 weeks. When Alex saw me, he instinctively wanted to greet me, but ultimately he remained silent and awkwardly turned his head. Next to him, Megan's expression soured, her eyes red as if she had just cried, but they brightened instantly upon seeing me. Witnessing this unwanted display, I felt no interest in their antics. Just as I was about to ignore them and enter, my mother grabbed my wrist. "Sarah, because of your guilt and self-blame, Megan is suffering from severe depression. The doctor said she needs a partner. We've already consulted Alex. You will support your sister, right?" Seeing me silent, she continued. "Megan has gained some fame in the national sports scene over the years, and a lot of money has been invested to promote her career. As her sister, you can't just watch her career collapse, can you?" Her sharp tone gave me a headache, and I silently withdrew my hand, looking at the 4 people before me, each with their own agendas. Having stripped away the familial facade, I saw through their hidden motives. Even if Alex wanted to be with Megan, there were many respectful ways to negotiate. They didn't need to create a scene at the company entrance to force me to comply. In the end, they were merely testing my limits, wanting to see if I would still obey them as before, willing to sacrifice my interests endlessly to please them. After contemplating for a moment, I provided my answer. But before they could show relieved smiles, I turned to Alex and said, "After 6 years of college and building this company, I want 15% of the original shares as compensation." Surprised by my demand, Alex's expression darkened. He was about to respond, but I pressed on. "If the compensation is sufficient, I won't mention you and Megan again. Even if you two marry in the future, you don't need to invite me. I won't return home. As long as you don't interfere with me, I'll disappear from your lives completely. You don't want your sports star to be labeled as a mistress, do you?" As soon as I finished speaking, Megan reacted almost immediately. She didn't allow Alex to think and simply held his arm, starting to cry. Alex, who had always prided himself on honesty and not caring about money, now in the throes of love, surprisingly agreed to the arrangement. The company was co-founded by Alex and me. I held 26% of the shares, and he held 35%. Over the years, I bought back 10% of his shares. If Alex were to transfer his remaining shares to me, I would become the largest shareholder, thereby marginalizing him. To prevent Alex from changing his mind once he regained his senses, I immediately took out my phone, instructed the secretary to prepare the documents, and contacted a notary. The moment I acquired the shares, I sincerely wished Megan and Alex 100 years of happiness. I even escorted them to the company's entrance. Sarah looked at me with a triumphant smile and warned Megan, "Megan, you have the funds now. You better not cling to Alex anymore." I smiled and signaled for the security guard to escort them out. My mother emerged from behind them, staring intently, and asked, "What do you mean you're never coming home again?" Realizing I didn't respond, she began accusing me passionately. "Are you trying to kill me?" But I wouldn't succumb to her fabricated illness this time. I didn't even glance at her. I simply turned to leave. Finally, the smug expression in my mother's eyes vanished. "What's wrong?" She tugged at my sleeve, her face filled with panic, her voice trembling. She sensed that her feigned illness and manipulative tactics from the past were no longer effective. Because I no longer cared about her, I wouldn't pretend to feel guilty for her fake illness anymore. I spoke softly, looking at her and Sarah's family behind her, and said slowly, "In the future, you and your family should live well." "What do you mean by that?" My father, who hadn't spoken until now, was agitated. He rushed over to me, attempting to strike me, but the security guards I had previously called stood firmly in front of me. This time, my father was stunned, clutching his heart as if he might faint from anger, just like my mother did earlier. At this point, my nephew finally broke free from Megan's grip and approached me. He looked at me disapprovingly, saying, "Sarah, you can hate me, but your aunt and uncle are still your biological parents. What you're doing is excessive." Yes, I didn't have time to argue with him, so I lowered my head, picked up my phone, and began handling the documents. Alex was taken aback by my indifferent attitude. Just as he was about to say something else, I raised my head and looked at him earnestly. "Alex, there's nothing left to discuss between us. You can keep the money, but I don't want any further contact." As I touched upon my calm and icy expression, a hint of panic finally appeared on his face. "And considering your unexplained absence for 2 weeks, we can no longer trust you. The company has decided to remove you from the position of CEO. I hope you can remain composed, don't persist, and preferably disappear far away." After saying that, I showed him my phone, even blacklisting his contact information right in front of him. Ignoring Alex's displeased expression, I turned and left confidently. As expected, I assumed Alex's former position, coordinated with the other shareholders, and ultimately, Alex had no choice but to sell his remaining shares. It's true that men can significantly impact their careers. After driving Alex away, the company's development began to thrive. In contrast, while I was amassing wealth, Alex remained fixated on his romantic role, focusing on dating his ex-fiance's sister. At this point, they still considered themselves winners. Megan maintained a high profile, constantly posting pictures with Alex and my parents on various social platforms, showcasing their family love and affection. Naturally, all these expenses were covered by Alex. Since my parents retired, their lives became strained, and all their savings over the years had been drained supporting Megan's athletic career. Previously, they maintained a facade of prosperity because of me, and now the entire family was dependent on Alex. Their relatives, who visited regularly, remained unaware and continued praising them for finding a wealthy son-in-law. Just as they were eager to spread the word and boast about their picture-perfect family, I purchased a new house for my aunt. I relocated her from the old neighborhood to a detached house in the city center. My aunt had never been married or had children. She treated me like her own daughter. Initially, she was reluctant to accept that her name was on the property deed, until I assured her that the house was hers and couldn't be manipulated by greedy individuals. As I reminisced about our past, I mimicked an affectionate gesture, leaning on her shoulder. I said, "I'll live with Aunt from now on. Don't reject me, okay?" Tears welled up in my aunt's eyes. She gently patted my back and comforted me softly. "It's okay. It's okay. As long as Aunt's here, we'll always have a home." Upon hearing that I had bought a house for my aunt, My parents suddenly became anxious and hurried to the outskirts of the neighborhood where my aunt and I resided. Security was tight here. They couldn't linger at the gate for more than 3 minutes without presenting their information. My father called my aunt's phone and unleashed a barrage of insults. In his mind, my aunt had become a troublemaker who poisoned their father-daughter relationship. My aunt listened calmly and then asked him, "Do you really need me to create discord after what you've done to Sarah?" My father hesitated, but before he could respond, she continued, "You say Sarah is your daughter, but why doesn't your house have her bedroom or wardrobe? There are no dishes or utensils for her, not even a photo of her in the family portrait. If she's your daughter, where do you place her?" I watched my aunt become emotional over the phone, so I approached and hugged her from behind. I recalled the bitter winter when I lacked proper winter clothing and had to layer my spring and autumn school uniform. I ended up shivering in the snow, but when I returned home, no one was there. My parents had taken Megan out to watch a movie. There was no food left for me in the kitchen, and I had no money in my pockets. Before collapsing, I barely made it to the entrance of my aunt's neighborhood. Her house was 5 long streets away from mine, seemingly the longest distance I had ever walked. If I had fallen anywhere during that snowstorm, I would never have reached safety. Fortunately, I made it. I saw my aunt coming down with an umbrella to take out the trash. I noticed the shock and concern on her face as she rushed over and embraced me, helping me regain sensation from the cold. From then on, I had a home again. My room was at my aunt's house, my dishes and utensils were there, and she even bought back the piano that had been sold, placing it quietly in the living room. I had long forgotten how to play the piano, but that day, I silently vowed in my heart that as long as I was there, I would be my aunt's greatest support in the future. So now, when my father was being questioned by my aunt on the phone and began spewing foul language in response, I calmly took the phone and said to him, "Don't even think about a new house. Say one more word, and you won't even be able to stay in your current one." He forgot that not only the house, but also their living expenses had all been coming from my card. Their massive retirement funds and savings had been depleted over the years, supporting Megan's competitions and training from top instructors. Yet they still looked down on me everywhere. Their voices were cut off on the other end after 2 seconds, and my father exploded with a thunderous roar. "Sarah, you've gone too far. How dare you?" The louder he shouted, the more guilty he felt. I had already faced death once on the operating table, so there was nothing I wouldn't dare now. I calmly expressed my feelings, but my father took these words as me blaming them for their actions. He tried a softer approach, attempting to scold and then sweet-talk me as usual. He said, "In the end, you are still blaming us for caring too much about your sister. Why don't you think about how pitiful your sister is? It seems like you really believe you live too comfortably now." After he finished speaking, I hung up the phone and began contacting a real estate agent. While I was preparing to sell the house, my father and his wife were relentless, trying to track me down and cause trouble wherever I went. I avoided them for 3 days, had someone record sufficient evidence, and then reported them to the police shortly after. They were detained for 15 days on charges of provocation and causing disturbances. My parents, who thought they had led a dignified life, never imagined their daughter would send them to the police station in their old age. In front of the police, they cursed and scolded me, accusing me of being unfilial. Finding it too noisy, I put in earplugs, turned to the police who came to mediate, and firmly refused to reconcile. As they were taken away, my once strict and authoritative father, as I remembered him, looked at me with a hint of fear in his eyes, realizing that I might truly stop caring about them. He softened his tone towards me, calling my name, "Sarah, Sarah, Sarah," repeatedly. It was an intimacy I hadn't received since I was 10 years old. But I had no emotions left, so I didn't soften towards him. Unfortunately, Megan had run off. When my parents were taken away, she immediately went on a trip with Alex. To protect the reputation of the sports star they had cultivated, my parents insisted that this was all part of their plan, and that Megan had no role in instigating anything. I imagined Megan's unpleasant demeanor when not causing harm, figuring there would be another opportunity sooner or later. So during this time, I sold the original house at a low price to a man with a tattooed arm who could handle both black and white issues. Before my parents were released, Megan returned from her trip only to find herself locked out of the house. She couldn't believe the house was gone and knocked on the door for a long time, demanding an explanation. When the door finally opened, she saw the tall figure of the tattooed man and was too scared to move. In the end, Alex drove her to his own home. Within 2 days, my parents were released. Upon hearing that I had sold the house, they began cursing the sky and earth. But no one dared to bother me again. Their survival became their primary concern, so my parents quickly packed their bags and moved into Alex's house overnight. At first, Alex welcomed them, but after years of flaunting and asserting themselves to me, they couldn't resist and soon began exhibiting unpleasant traits towards Alex. Alex, who had never been pushed around since childhood, quickly confronted them. Not long after my parents moved out of Alex's house, he rented a separate apartment for them, situated half a city away from his own residence. Because of this, my parents constantly blamed Megan. They claimed that when Alex was with me, he never disrespected them like this. Why didn't Megan say anything to Alex? Megan relied on Alex to fund her athletic pursuits. How could she stand firm in front of Alex? Over time, to maintain her relationship with Alex, Megan grew distant from her parents as well. One day, when Megan visited her parents, she overheard them complaining about Alex. It made her nostalgic for the days when she took care of their daily lives. But Megan had grown tired of their manipulative ways. She destroyed everything she could in the house and then confronted her parents, asking why they didn't come to her if they thought she was so exceptional. This was the first time she had ever lost her composure in front of her parents. After firmly securing Alex, Megan realized that her family was merely a colorful backdrop in her life, and she no longer needed anyone's approval. The confrontation was explosive. My mother was the primary aggressor, wailing and pulling Megan's hair at the rental house entrance, alternately calling her ungrateful and accusing her of not appreciating her years of care and investment. My father, feeling embarrassed, sat silently inside, smoking. Megan stood her ground, shouting back at my mother, labeling her a vampire and ungrateful. Eventually, the commotion drew the attention of the entire floor before abruptly ending. This incident made headlines, causing relatives who once flattered them to scatter, severing ties. One relative recounted my parents' situation to me, expressing disbelief at how they had once boasted about raising children well and were now describing Megan as ungrateful. As he spoke, he glanced at me, trying to please me, saying, "Sarah, let me say your aunt really has a good eye for choosing you as her treasure. Now just enjoy it in comfort." But my aunt was unimpressed and unceremoniously kicked him out. As the door closed, she remained angry, pointing out how they had mocked me as a wild child when I was young. But now that her son was graduating and job hunting, they praised me. I felt nothing towards this. I had encountered too many people like them in the first half of my life. But as I watched my aunt's worried expression under the warm yellow light, a fleeting warmth filled my heart. Only then did I realize that a few strands of white hair had appeared among her star clocks. I reached out and held her hand, asking her not to be angry and inviting her to a feast. "Aunt, I said what he said was wrong. It's not that you made the right choice by picking me, but I'm lucky to have met you." Under the warm glow of the light, my aunt's eyes turned red. She turned away to wipe her eyes before turning back to me with a smile, saying, "Don't be silly. I'm your aunt. It's only natural for me to love you." I worked harder than ever, with my rational and objective perspective driving the company's profits to soar. My own value increased proportionally. When I saw Alex again, it was at a business gala hosted by a partner. Alex was dressed in a meticulously tailored suit, his hair carefully styled, but the weariness on his once proud face was unmistakable. It was clear that life had been tough for him while supporting his entire family. Megan's expenses for our athletic endeavors weighed on my parents' finances, and Alex's need for their support meant he had to break up with Megan since his parents had never approved of her. It was obvious that he truly loved her. So, to gain his family's support, he was willing to lower himself and pander to the small-time bosses he had once looked down upon. However, these people whom he had previously dismissed now seemed to look down on him. The bosses who had been all over him lit up as they saw me. They greeted me and approached swiftly. Alex, caught in the middle, could only stand awkwardly in place. But as our eyes met, something in his demeanor changed, seemingly losing the confidence he once had. When the company was just starting out, Alex never cared for the relationships nurtured at social gatherings, as it was always me handling that aspect of the business. Now, with the company and partnerships on the right track, those people naturally acknowledged me, but not him. It was only the next moment when he seemed to make a decisive move that he strode towards me. I turned and whispered something to someone beside me. The bodyguard immediately intercepted him and politely escorted him out of the area. It wasn't until the banquet ended that night, as I was getting into my car, that I encountered Alex waiting by the side. I looked at him, recalling our past together. After confirming that everything that happened was irreversible without any lingering attachments, I turned and got into my car without hesitation. Alex hurried to stop me, but the car door closed on his hand, making a sharp noise as his fingers broke, his face pale with pain. He kept his eyes fixed on me. "Do we have to go this far, Sarah?" His voice was hoarse from pain. I lowered the window, handed him a check for $100,000, and offered a light smile for his medical expenses. Then, without waiting for a response, I accelerated away. Since seeing Alex, I had been on high alert. This group of people was experiencing internal conflicts and were eyeing me for their next move. 2 days later, I saw Megan at the entrance of the company, whom I had not seen in a long time. If I remembered correctly, she was supposed to be participating in a very important competition at the City Theater. The organizing committee had sent me an invitation to watch the competition, and Megan's name was on the participant list. However, she wasn't even wearing her athletic outfit and had deliberately applied tired-looking makeup on her face, clearly coming for me. Upon seeing me, Megan immediately adopted a pitiful expression and knelt down without saying a word. "Sarah, he is your brother-in-law now. How can you retaliate against him like this just because of your own relationship issues?" She cried internally as if performing in a play. I could see several professional cameras gradually moving closer among the onlookers. Megan had planned all of this. I forcefully pulled her hand and said coldly, "Megan, let's set things straight. It was you who first took your sister's boyfriend, then failed to keep him in check, allowing him to harass me. I defended myself against him and even paid his medical expenses. What more do you want?" My voice was loud enough for everyone around to hear. Megan turned pale and looked at me with resentment in her eyes. The whispers among the crowd grew louder, and I knew she must have a trick up her sleeve. Sure enough, after Megan cried even more, 2 familiar figures appeared before me. If I were still capable of feeling emotions, I might have laughed out loud at their display. Their relationship seemed so perfect. Despite the embarrassing incident last time, they had reconciled with Megan in the end. Unfortunately, I no longer had feelings, so I intervened before my parents could say anything, signaling to my secretary to activate the recording equipment. Several cameras were pointed at them. In a calm and slow tone, I said, "From now on, every word you say will be recorded by me as evidence, and legal consequences will follow afterwards. If any of your statements constitute defamation, I will file a lawsuit and pursue it to the end." Upon hearing this, my father's face turned livid instantly. My mother tried to speak several times, but no words came out. Impatient, I turned and walked away. She finally rushed forward, clinging to my legs, crying and pleading. She asked, "What has happened to you? I am your mother. You never treated me like this before?" She recounted the difficulties of raising me over the years, regretting her past actions and begging for forgiveness with tears in her eyes. She asked, "Sarah, does it mean you don't want me anymore?" I looked at her tearful eyes without a hint of emotion stirring within me. As I pondered how to respond without causing too much negative impact on the company's image, a strong pair of hands suddenly pulled her away from me. I looked up to see my aunt glaring at my parents and Megan, shouting, "Grace, how dare you try to force Sarah into anything? I have evidence of everything you did. Don't push me to expose it all," she continued, pointing at Megan, who was now trembling. "This is my brother's adopted daughter, the woman he abandoned his own daughter for." Megan, realizing the implications, tried to stop my aunt from speaking, but was too late. My aunt turned back and loudly said to my mother, who was still seated on the ground, "My brother never had any deceased war comrades. The girl he adopted is the daughter born out of an affair he had with his ex-lover." This revelation hit my mother like a thunderbolt, and it took her a moment to process it. Megan, unable to bear the pressure, turned and fled into the crowd. It was only then that my mother fully grasped the situation and rushed forward, grabbed Megan, examined her closely, and then without hesitation slapped her hard across the face. Megan cried out in pain. It was a heavy blow. Since she came to our house at the age of 6, my parents had always cherished and protected her as if she were a precious gem in their hands. She had never been treated like this before, and her usually innocent eyes were filled with tears. Her cries only seemed to provoke my mother even more. She continued to grab whatever she could find as a weapon and struck Megan repeatedly while Megan dodged and sought help from my father with pleading eyes. The surrounding crowd watched the drama unfold. No one had expected that the family that came to question me would end up quarreling among themselves. The journalist Megan had hired to take pictures had already been escorted out by my private security. As my aunt led me away, the scene escalated, with my father protecting Megan and receiving a slap from my mother, who was then wrestled to the ground by my father in an attempt to stop her from attacking Megan. The security intervened again as the situation spiraled out of control, and they all ended up at the police station once more. This time, I had several paparazzi hired by Megan with prepared stories to tarnish my reputation, accusations and rumors Megan couldn't escape. In the end, it was Alex holding hands with someone, rushing over to pick them up from his house. The commotion at the company's entrance today had already made it to the local trending topics. Perhaps Alex already knew the whole story on his way, but when he saw a disheveled Megan at the police station, he still wore a look of disbelief on his face. "Megan, aren't you supposed to be at the competition?" His gaze fell on Megan, realizing that even the clothes under her coat were not the performance outfit she hadn't had time to change into, which made him even more silent. Initially, Alex loved her for her artistic passion. He supported Megan's dancing as if making up for his past self, who was too afraid to pursue his dreams boldly. He even set aside his own dignity, getting down to the nitty-gritty of life. But now, this image was on the brink of collapse. For her to tarnish her own foster sister's reputation just to clear her own name and to easily give up on a competition that was more important to her than her own life in her eyes. People are like this sometimes, willing to disregard everything in the heat of the moment but then backpedaling in the next instance. Seeing the questioning look in Alex's eyes, Megan was clearly panicked. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she hastily began to explain, "Alex, it's not what you think. It was Sarah. She tampered with my performance in the competition, and I had no choice but to do that. I just wanted her to let me go." This was Megan's original plan, to come to my company's entrance, unite with my birth parents to publicly disgrace me, paint me in the image of a jealous and malicious foster sister, and use this as an opportunity to accuse me of manipulation behind the scenes, ensuring that Megan couldn't win what she deserved, even if she participated in the competition. Although she gave up the competition, she could use this scandal to boost her reputation and make sure she didn't lose anything. It was a risky move, but Megan confidently went through with it, relying on the support from my family. She thought she could pin me under public opinion, but little did she know that Megan discovered she was the product of my father's affair with his first love after marrying my mother. And with one mistake, everything was lost. Even now, she still tried to tarnish my reputation. But before Alex walked in, my assistant had already laid out all the details of the matter for him to see, including Megan's transaction records with those paparazzi and their prepared fabrications to frame me. Many things they mentioned hadn't even happened yet, but they confidently claimed they did. Meanwhile, the organizing committee had already issued a statement. They had been organizing the competition for decades and had always maintained a good reputation. Megan not showing up for the competition and planning to disgrace them made them furious, especially since some of the higher-ups had connections with Alex's parents. Even if Alex wanted to intervene, they had already learned about Megan's existence. Alex's plan to boost Megan's fame and then bring her back home had fallen apart. I wasn't sure what kind of mindset he had coming to see Megan, but Megan's immediate reaction of lying to him sealed her fate in his eyes. The filter over Megan broke, and Alex's look towards her turned icy cold. He didn't even say a word, just turned around and left, leaving a bewildered Megan watching her last hope slip away bit by bit. Without Alex compensating her losses, Megan received an additional 15 days in detention. During this period, the dance competition committee initiated a lawsuit against Megan, and with Alex's parents' manipulation, the 15 days were forcibly extended to 2 months. My parents were also detained along with them. Having led a splendid life in their later years, they were in and out of prison twice in a year. Their affair during the marriage was exposed, and all the praise they had received for adopting Megan was now replaced with ridicule and mockery. Before I left, my father asked me one last time if I really wanted to end up like this. I turned around and with utmost sincerity told him, "I'm not trying to start trouble. I've been swept along by life for so long, and I just want to break free from the undertow that's been dragging me down for years. I just want to live my own life well, no longer being held hostage by familial ties, no longer having expectations of those who aren't worth it, no longer sacrificing myself in unjust ways to earn their approval. Do you understand? I no longer love you. This is the last time I will address you like this. Farewell, Mom and Dad." With those last words, my father couldn't discern my expression. I turned and left, catching a glimpse of my mother, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to say something as she saw me leaving, but in the end, nothing came out. Maybe now she truly regretted it, spending a lifetime pushing her daughter away only to make wedding garments for someone else. But what did that have to do with me? For more than 20 years, I shed enough tears for them. As I walked out of the police station, my aunt was waiting at the door for me. She was one of the few people in the world who truly understood my father. She was worried that my actions now would embarrass my father, and that he might do something detrimental to me in the future. And then there's Megan. She's not one to stay quiet and spoke her worries evident in her eyes. I gently placed my hand on hers, telling her that we're not as weak as we used to be, that we can withstand whatever comes our way. Only then did my aunt relax a bit. After that, I kept an eye on their family's movements. I knew that Alex and Megan had broken up. Megan resisted violently and even caused trouble in front of Alex's parents, leading to harsh repercussions. My parents devoted all their wealth to farming for so many years, but now, in just a blink of an eye, Megan was banned by the national sports community, disappearing completely. Megan, no longer having any support, chose to bow down to my father and cling tightly to my parents. However, every time my mother saw Megan, she was filled with resentment. She wanted to divorce my father, but he didn't agree, so she vented her frustrations by yelling and abusing Megan. During this time, my business kept growing, showing signs of expanding into overseas markets. Alex's parents, whom I used to disdain, now sent me invitations, and Alex tried to contact me several times, but I didn't respond once. Later, at a dinner party, I met Alex again. He seemed much more mature than before, but his eyes held a trace of melancholy when he looked at me. "Sarah, you've become so successful now, I almost don't recognize you," he greeted me, his eyes uncertain, lacking the confidence he once had. Although he hadn't changed much, he had lost his former arrogance, seemingly afraid of being rejected by me. Alex quickly started speaking, apologizing to me face to face. He said he owed me an apology for a long time. He finally realized that he had never really liked Megan. He had just projected his inner desires onto her, thinking he could find his true self through her. Now I understand how naive I was before. After losing you, I realized what I had truly lost. I listened to his words impatiently, and finally, I couldn't hold back anymore and stood up to leave. Alex, no matter how nice you say it, you can't change the fact that you couldn't resist the allure and cheated during our relationship. Now you have the audacity to appear in front of me. You really have no shame. After removing the filter on Alex, I realized that the person I once idolized was just like that. Moreover, I had surpassed his previous position long ago, and from now on, I would be the one to illuminate my own life. Perhaps feeling too much pressure from me, not long after, I heard that Alex and Megan had hooked up again. Indeed, there's only 0 or countless instances of cheating. But this time, Megan could no longer enjoy the pampering treatment she used to receive from Alex. He brutally exposed his dark side to her. Alex often physically abused Megan, and worse, he would constantly belittle her in words, calling her the most despicable woman in the world. He looked down on Megan, but wanted to gain respect and satisfaction from her. During their entanglement, unexpectedly, my parents reconciled. It was said that my mother was pregnant again, a late child in their lives, which completely dispelled her thoughts of divorce, and even led her to accept Megan. On a rainy night with thunder and lightning, An urgent, unfamiliar call came to my phone. Upon answering, my father's panicked voice came through. "Sarah, your mother fell at home and there's a lot of blood. We don't know what to do. Please come see her. She raised you for over 20 years. After hanging up, I calmly dialed the emergency hotline for them, arranging for an ambulance. My aunt, who was present, looked at me anxiously, standing up several times to offer to accompany me outside. "No need. I'm not a doctor. I won't be of help there," I calmly replied. My aunt looked at me for a while before whispering, "Right, the weather outside is bad. It's dangerous to go out." I listened to my aunt's words, feeling a hint of doubt creeping in. When I finished dealing with business late at night and was preparing to rest, my phone vibrated. Answering the call, there was a burst of chaotic electrical noise. Without hesitation, I hung up the call, only to realize upon exiting the call screen that the number had sent me several text messages. The latest one was just a few lines. "I'm sorry. I'm not worthy to be your mother. Take care of yourself and your aunt, Sarah. I'm going to atone." Scrolling up, I saw 3 words. "Don't come here." My heart jumped at that moment, a long-lost feeling of suspicion rising in my chest. I stood up from my seat and headed towards the door. But as my gaze caught the pouring rain and thunder outside, my steps gradually slowed. In the end, I took out my phone and dialed the police hotline in my parents' area. The next morning, the first contact I received was from the police. They informed me that, last night, a fire broke out in the old neighborhood where my parents lived. Megan, my parents, and Alex all perished in the flames. After their investigation, they suspected that someone had deliberately set the fire because the forensic examiners found excessive sleeping pills in all 4 bodies. I couldn't describe the emotions within me. From the moment I saw the text message last night, the fleeting emotional roller coaster to now, I remained utterly calm. But it was my aunt who now had teary eyes as she looked at me. She embraced me and gently reassured me, telling me that she would be there for me as my family. I lowered my eyes and remained silent. It was only after a long time when the police investigation results came out that I learned what had really happened that night. Turns out my mother wasn't actually pregnant, and she wanted to divorce my father. In embarrassment, my father tied her up at home. During that time, Megan didn't fare well. Under the manipulation of Alex's parents, she was socially dead at university, banned in the sports community, and stayed at home all day, venting her frustrations on my mother. Of course, she hated me the most. She felt that everything happening now was my fault, especially since Alex always seemed distant with her and often used me to belittle her. Megan made up her mind and devised a malicious plan with my father. They wanted to lure me over with my mother's help, then stage an accident to kill me and split my current assets. When my mother found out about it, she surprisingly offered to help my father. In my father's eyes, my mother was also full of hatred towards me, so he didn't guard against her much. That rainy night, my mother spiked my father and Megan's food with sleeping pills and then called Alex over. Despite Alex looking down on Megan, he still respected my mother. When he arrived, he was also drugged. My mother lined them up neatly, then lit the gas stove in the house. Additionally, we obtained Sarah's well from your relatives. The police handed me a letter, and as I opened it, the paper was stained with tear marks. "Sarah, if we're destined to meet in the next life, I'll make sure to be a good mother. For now, I'll seek redemption." I thought if there really is a next life, it's probably best not to be entangled again. Later, my aunt and I lived well. During the first snowfall, I was making dumplings at my aunt's house, which was decorated in warm colors. As the first snowflake fell, she called me over for dinner. When I turned around, I saw my aunt's kind side profile, and familiar warmth gradually thawed from my icy heart. So, I smiled at my aunt with genuine emotion for the first time in ages. My aunt, holding a plate, was stunned in place. Slowly, her eyes welled up with tears. We locked eyes and smiled. Finally, after enduring countless trials and tribulations, the road ahead was only filled with blooming spring flowers.